Hey booktubers! So I am here today to do a hopefully coherent and hopefully spoiler-free review of Looking for Alaska by John Green. Now, I just finished this book last night, which was New Year's Eve, but technically, since I finished it after midnight, I'm going to include it on my 2012 reading list. Now, I'm self-proclaimed to be late to the John Green party. John Green party. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I've actually always been a fan of his videos with his brother Hank, the Vlog Brothers, who, of course, everybody knows them. I'm sure anybody who watches YouTube have heard of them. And I've always wanted to read something by him, but I just never got around to it until one day I just got into my head that I wanted to read Looking for Alaska. I had recently seen some really great reviews for the book, and I just decided that I had to read it. So I made a special trip to the bookstore specifically looking for that book, and naturally that was the one John Green book that they didn't have. So I was very disappointed, but I ended up getting it on my Kindle, and I just finished it last night, and I have not been able to get it out of my head since I finished it. Frankly, I knew I wanted to do a review for this book, but I can't really think of a way to express how I feel and what a huge impact this book had on me. Nothing I can say really can justify how amazing this book is. And therein lies the problem, is that I can't really discuss a lot of the things that affected me so much because I don't want to spoil the story for anyone. So, as I said, please forgive me for stumbling on my words, because I'm trying to be very, very careful as to what I say. But Looking for Alaska is the story of this boy named Miles, but his friends call him Pudge. And he's very much a nerd, very much a loner, doesn't really have any friends, and he ends up going to this boarding school that his father used to go to in Alabama. And he's very much, like I said, he's very much a misfit. You know, he's obsessed with the final words of famous people throughout history. And that was another thing that drew me to this book, is because that's something that's always interested me, is the final words of famous people, which seems like such a strange thing to be obsessed with, and I have never met anybody who likes that, who's been into that sort of thing. So that was another reason why I wanted to read this book. But yeah, he's very much a misfit, and when he's at the school, he finally starts making friends, and he finally starts to feel like he belongs, and he becomes really good friends with his roommate, this kid named Chip, who everybody calls the Colonel, and this girl who lives down the hall named Alaska. And he develops this crush on Alaska, but she's, very much the life of the party and sort of a wild child, and he is pretty much friend material. And so the first part of this book deals with the aftermath of Pudge pretty much getting hazed by these kids at the school, and Pudge, Colonel, and Alaska planning this gigantic prank on the people who hazed Pudge. And about halfway through the book, something happens that you completely don't see coming, at least I didn't see coming, and it just completely changes the scope of the book. And it almost feels, the way that John Green wrote the book, the first half of the book, is like a countdown leading up to a certain event, and then the last half of the book is, after, days, however many days after this certain thing that happens. And that was a brilliant way of doing it, because it is pretty much like two separate stories. There's the first half, and then there's the second half, and he somehow makes both halves work. And I don't really know how to express how much this book affected me. It is one of those books that I can understand. It sounds really cheesy when people say it, but I can understand how somebody can read this book and say that it completely changed their life, because it is just so emotional and just it. Oh my God! At the end of this book, I was crying, but it wasn't a sad crying. It was almost like it was a little sad, but it was also a little happy. And I know that sounds kind of stupid, but yeah, it just, these characters like crawled into my head and just, put up permanent residence in my brain. And I know that, I'll be 70 years old and I will still remember this book and I will still remember these characters. And it is just absolutely, definitely one of my very favorite books now of all time. And so this is the first official book that I finished technically in 2012, and if this is any indication, 2012 is going to be a kick-ass year for books again, because it's a great book to start off the year with. It's just absolutely brilliant. And again, I seem to be saying this a lot lately, but I really could kick myself for not reading anything by him sooner. So I am currently reading An Abundance of Catherines, which I know a few people didn't like. A few people I know on Goodreads didn't like it, but so far I like it. I'm very early on in the book, but yeah. But as far as Looking for Alaska goes, on my rating scale of 1 to 5 stars, it is a definite huge 5-star rating. Definitely on my favorites shelf now, and it's one of those books that I will definitely be recommending to just about everybody I know, because it's one of a kind, and I understand now why it's being taught in schools. I understand why so many people love this book, and I understand why it affected so many people, because it is that good, and it actually lives up to all of the hype surrounding it, which is very rare. So let me know what you guys think, if you've read it, if you want to read it, what your thoughts are on John Green in general, if you like him, or if you think he's too hyped up or whatever. And I always love comments from you guys. So as always, leave me some love, people. And I will talk to you guys next time. And as always, happy reading.